Settle in for a moment, the way one might pause before opening a well-worn volume in a quiet corner of an old library. There is a softness to beginnings like this, where dust settles slowly and nothing urges the page to turn too quickly. Crossbows have always belonged to that kind of silence, measured, patient, certain. The royal crossbow carried that intention, with a weight that was less about mass and more about authority. Its reinforced limbs, shaped by craftsmen who understood that precision served power better than display. Its prod was strengthened beyond the standards of ordinary arsenals, drawing energy inward with a tension that felt almost ceremonial, as if each shot required not just strength, but permission. When it was raised, the room changed. When it released, it did so with the calm certainty of a verdict. The stirrup was polished until it held the faintest glint even in dim hallways. The stock carved with a restrained elegance that betrayed the hours of labor hidden beneath its surface. This was not a weapon meant to be lost in the noise of a battlefield. It was built for the measured distances of courtyards, hunting parks, guarded terraces, spaces where authority needed to extend just far enough to be understood. Its mechanics, deliberate and balanced, allowed the bolt to travel with unwavering confidence, stitching line and intention into a single, decisive movement. Yet the logic inside its frame, the anchored draw, the held breath of stored energy, the release that felt like a whispered command, flowed naturally towards smaller, more intimate shapes used away from palaces, where the air was colder and the trees listened more than people. From that lineage emerged the hunting crossbow, compact and pragmatic, built to track the heavy rhythm of large game through forests where longer weapons faltered. Its presence a quiet continuation of the same idea, that a machine could wait, motionless, until the world aligned, and then speak with absolute clarity. The hunting crossbow lived in shadows broken only by branches, its compact frame built to slip through narrow clearings where breath turned white, and every sound carried intention. Hunters valued it not for spectacle but for certainty, trusting the short, hardened bolts to drive deep into the hide of boar or elk without the long preparation demanded by larger war engines. It was steadier than instinct, quieter than footfall, relying on the slow draw of a steel prod that stored more potential than its size suggested. There, in the hush of early morning or the fading blue of late dusk, the hunter and the mechanism shared the same kind of patience, the kind that turned stillness into opportunity. And yet even this intimacy of motion, this compact certainty shaped by forest paths, belonged to a lineage that soon stretched far beyond woods and private grounds, into the ordered geometry of marching ranks. The long infantry crossbow emerged from that transition, its elongated tiller and high-tension prod designed for distances where wind, formation, and terrain collided into a single equation. It was not carried for elegance but for pressure, a weapon that allowed infantry to impose shape on the battlefield long before swords or shields met. Soldiers trusted its slow, methodical loading because each bolt carried the weight of predictability. The groove etched into its stock guided not just the projectile, but the intention behind it. The weapon demanded discipline rather than speed. It required the soldier to bow into the stirrup, draw the string with deliberate strength or mechanical aid, lock the nut with care, and only then lift the frame toward the shifting horizon of approaching lines. And when it fired, the sound was not a crack or a snap, but a controlled exhale of tension released after being held too long. Rows of these crossbows formed quiet boundaries across fields, defining lanes of threat that advancing forces hesitated to cross. Their bolts, heavier than those of hunting models, traveled in flatter arcs, piercing mail, shields, and the confidence of formations unprepared for such regulated precision. The long infantry crossbow did not alter the forest or the court. It altered distance itself, teaching armies that space could be ruled before footsteps even reached it. And from that understanding came a darker refinement, one shaped not for formations or open ground, but for the unseen places where a single shot carried more consequence than 100 commands. A refinement that would take form in the sniper crossbow, waiting ahead like a shadow that learned how to breathe. The sniper crossbow belonged to a different rhythm entirely, one measured not by volleys or marching steps, but by the slow dilation of a moment in which everything else fell silent. Its frame was narrow, its prod drawn with meticulous precision, its release mechanism engineered for the kind of stillness that turned a single bolt into a question asked across distance without warning. Hidden in ravines, beneath overhangs, within crumbling walls or the deep folds of woodland, it became an extension of breath rather than muscle, demanding not strength, but patience. The shooter watched for patterns in movement, waited for breaks in wind, learned to read the slight tilt of a helmet or the brief slackening of a guard's posture. When the bolt left the groove, it did so without flourish, its flight cutting through space in the clean line of inevitability. It was a weapon that shaped atmosphere, not territory, creating unease in anyone who sensed that the world around them could fall silent for the wrong reason. And yet even this poised danger, so dependent on quiet and timing, led naturally toward more restless inventions born from the need to strike not once, but faster, harder, with tightening intervals between thought and impact. This pressure gave rise to the spring-driven war crossbow, a machine that took the philosophy of stored tension and wound it into layers of coiled force meant to shorten the gap between shots. Instead of relying solely on raw draw strength, it used internal springs to accelerate the release, compressing preparation into a tighter cycle and giving soldiers a rare advantage in the brief spaces where battle lines shuddered or broke. Its internal components hummed faintly when primed, a contained vibration that signaled readiness, its frame reinforced to withstand stress that ordinary crossbows would splinter beneath. When triggered, the bolt leapt forward with a brisk, almost metallic urgency, carving through the air in a motion too sharp to belong to traditional arbalests. It was less patient than its predecessors, less contemplative. But in the charged chaos of close engagements, that impatience became a weapon in itself. Crews armed with such devices could respond to sudden threats with a tempo that unsettled advancing forces, undermining the rhythm on which they relied. The spring-driven crossbow narrowed the gap between the measured calm of drawn tension and the violent certainty of release, reshaping the battlefield's cadence. And in that pursuit of tighter intervals, of collapsing pauses between one strike and the next, emerged a design that stretched the idea further. A mechanism not content with one release at all, but three, following each other like echoes inside a confined space. The triple-trigger crossbow, already forming at the edge of innovation. The triple-trigger crossbow carried within it an impatience that earlier designs only hinted at. A mechanism shaped for moments when one bolt was insufficient to shift the balance, and hesitation was a luxury no battlefield granted. Its three sequential releases were arranged like echoes trapped inside the frame, each one following the previous with a rhythm that felt almost unnatural for a weapon of wood, sinew, and steel. The arbalester no longer needed to pause, reload, or breathe between shots. The machine breathed for him, transmitting its stored energy in three controlled pulses that unsettled any formation facing it. The first bolt disrupted alignment, the second broke confidence, the third exploited the fracture. Each release demanded its own micro-gesture. A slight pressure of the finger, a subtle adjustment of aim, all performed with the calm certainty of a device engineered to compress chaos into a narrow space of time. And when the final bolt left the groove, the frame settled back into stillness like a beast briefly awakened. This hunger for multiplying force, for giving a single operator the power to disturb entire ranks, naturally led to ambitions that reached beyond skirmishes and forested passes. When armies confronted walls, when the geometry of siege demanded that every shot carry weight enough to challenge stone, engineers extended the logic of tension and release into something longer, heavier, more deliberate. From that ambition emerged the siege crossbow, a device whose length rivaled that of small engines and whose frame required crews rather than lone marksmen. It was anchored into the earth with braces and stakes, its oversized prod drawn by winches that groaned under the strain of accumulated force. Each bolt resembled a short spear, thick-shafted and iron-crowned, meant not only to pierce armor, but to batter wooden gates, crack parapets, or sweep defenders from ramparts with the sheer authority of its impact. When fired, the weapon didn't merely launch a projectile. It displaced air, rattled shields, and forced anyone within its path to reconsider the safety of elevated ground. Crews worked in steady, disciplined cycles, winding the drawstring over long minutes, checking alignment, adjusting elevation by degrees, understanding that a single well-placed shot could open weaknesses that entire divisions would later exploit. It was not fast, nor subtle, nor flexible, but it did not need to be. Its scale alone announced its purpose. And from that immovable mass of timber and tension, from that slow-loaded certainty built for crushing fortifications, would grow the desire to shrink power back into motion, to take lethality off the ground and place it into the hands of riders who needed range without sacrificing speed. Thus, from the shadow of the siege engine, the light cavalry crossbow would rise, already taking shape at the edges of this lineage. The light cavalry crossbow emerged as the opposite impulse to the siege engine's rooted weight, a weapon shaped for motion rather than emplacement. Riders needed something that could rise with the horse's rhythm, steady itself in the brief suspension between hoofbeats, and deliver a bolt with enough force to matter before momentum carried them past the point of impact. Its frame was shortened without weakening the prod, its stock narrowed to rest against the body with minimal sway, its trigger refined so that the jolt of a gallop would not betray the shot. Cavalrymen valued it not for raw power, but for opportunity. The fleeting windows, when a rider surged along the flank of an enemy column, when a scout shadowed a moving caravan, when a messenger needed the means to silence a threat without dismounting. Each bolt released from such a crossbow felt like an extension of the horse's motion itself, a straight line carved through dust and wind. Yet even in its agility, the weapon revealed a limitation. Lightness restricted the size and weight of the projectile, and cavalry, for all their speed, sometimes required the reach and penetration of something heavier. This tension between mobility and impact began to pull designers back toward mass, but not toward walls or heavy crews, instead toward a hybrid built for throwing not ordinary bolts, but dart-like projectiles that demanded a broader frame and greater leverage. From that need took shape the two-handed dart-throwing crossbow, already forming as the next answer to distance and force, taller and heavier than the cavalry model, its limbs preparing to channel energy into the long, narrow shafts that would soon define its presence. The two-handed dart-throwing crossbow stood apart from lighter cavalry models not by rejecting mobility, but by demanding a different kind of stillness. The controlled, grounded pause before unleashing a projectile far longer and heavier than any common bolt. Its limbs were broadened to store deep reserves of energy. Its tiller extended to guide the dart's length without shudder. Its draw assisted by cranks that wound tension into the weapon, like breath being pulled into a chest before a decisive word. When fired, the dart did not simply fly. It drove forward with a weight that bent the air around its passage, reaching distances that ordinary crossbows could not command. It struck shields with a force that pinned them back against the arm beneath, burrowed through layered armor, or cut across open ground in a straight, unwavering line. The weapon demanded both hands, not because it was unwieldy, but because the energy it contained needed a body braced behind it, anchoring intention to mass. And yet, for all its reach and power, there were places it did not belong. Narrow corridors, hidden approaches, the close confines of guarded halls where silence mattered more than distance. In those spaces, strength became less important than presence, and presence needed to disappear between breaths. From that necessity grew the elite short crossbow, a compact instrument shaped for those who moved behind thresholds rather than across fields. Its frame small enough to hide beneath a cloak, yet built with the meticulous precision expected of those entrusted with protecting chambers, dignitaries, or sealed passages. Its shot was quick, decisive, and quiet, the kind that left no warning and required no second release. And in its restrained geometry, the lineage of every crossbow, from royal halls to forests, battlegrounds, walls, and saddles, narrowed into a final point of tension, a last expression of distance mastered through the simple certainty of drawn steel waiting to exhale. The elite short crossbow lingered in the shadows of corridors long after its bolt had flown, its silence settling into stone the way breath settles after a whispered warning. It was a weapon that did not ask for recognition, only for purpose. Its presence measured not by distance or force, but by the narrow fraction of a moment in which it decided the fate of a guarded room. And when its tension finally eased into stillness, something in the long lineage of crossbows eased with it. From royal chambers to forest trails, from infantry lines to hidden ridges, from thunderous siege frames to weapons shaped for riders and scouts, each design left behind a trace of the age that required it. All of them turned distance into intention, intention into pressure, pressure into a single release that traveled farther than the hand that loosed it. In the quiet after the final shot, when the mechanism rested and the world reclaimed its ordinary sounds, the story of these weapons settled like dust upon an old table, present, unhurried, remembering without insisting.